This girl is gay.
Okay, Chasing Amy. You know, the first time that I ever watched this movie, I was kind of on a Kevin Smith kick, and I had heard that after Clerks and Mallrats, he'd kind of hit this era of really branching out creatively where he was still comedic, but was tackling much more complex subject matter. And, you know, I'm always down for that. So, you know, of course I watched it. And this movie, it's controversial.
Do you remember for one fucking second who I am?
I mean, Kevin Smith, a heterosexual man, although he may be bi-curious, is at least partially tackling queer culture. And I really felt odd about Chasing Amy at first because I couldn't tell if it was properly done or aged poorly or maybe even a fucking masterpiece. So I really do want to talk about it because it seems like it keeps moving up my list of favorite Kevin Smith movies.
There's no period of adjustment, Holden. I am fucking gay.
But I do find the idea that it is a lot to unpack interesting because, of course it is. It's ostensibly a queer film from the perspective of a heterosexual character in the 90s, which was a time of rampant homophobia. But I think a lot of people would argue that it was actually incredibly progressive for the time, but maybe not so progressive or even regressive through today's lens. But even that is up for debate. Like, certain scenes are just seriously insane to me that they were made 30 years ago because they're so relevant now.
So you're saying a person is a virgin until they've had intercourse with a member of the opposite sex?
Isn't that the standard definition?
Again, with your standards.
This is just honestly an incredible piece of dialogue because I can't believe this explanation was in the 90s when people now are still in need of a conversation like this one.
We had sex.
Yeah, but not real sex.
Like, people still diminish lesbian experiences as not enough to qualify as real, and therefore they hurt that community. Like, I don't know, it's just insane to me that this was filmed in the 90s. So we watch this film unfold from the perspective of Holden, played by Ben Affleck, who is an immature and misguided straight man.
Let me guess. You like her.
Oh,
Miss Alyssa Jones?
she's all right.
This immaturity manifests as misogyny, insecurity, and of course, homophobia, among other things. But first, Holden has to realize that he's developed feelings for a gay woman, and just to be clear, he doesn't know that she is gay yet.
There's something you should know.
She got a boyfriend.
Well, no.
Then what's to know, my friend?
But it's also a movie about a man who matures through seeing the flaws in his sort of socially ingrained and regressive views on gender roles. Like, in a way, it really attempts and to some succeeds in appealing to two extreme opposite perspectives, those in the queer community and Ben Affleck's. Straight men. Yeah, that. So, you know, let's dig into Chasing Amy a little bit. The year is 1997, Titanic, Tamagotchis, Spice Girls, Beanie Babies, and you might not know this one, Netflix was actually founded way back in 1997 as a mail-in video delivery service. Kinda cool. Now, I mentioned the quite ignorant perspective that ruled the 1990s.
Man, when's that gonna learn? You like chicks.
We can't deny that in 1997, homophobic and misogynistic language was everywhere. Like, look at Banky in this movie. He's throwing out slurs like each one earns him some stock in Amazon.
Fucking knocker!
And I know this is a bit cliche to say, but even though Banky essentially represents the extreme end of offensive and also potentially deep-seated self-hatred because of his own attractions toward men,
Don't kid yourself. That boy loves you in a way that he ain't ready to deal with.
I don't think, and this can be argued, I don't think that you would get this in a movie today because it's probably so offensive on the surface that a studio would be like, nah. So, in a way, that kind of paradoxically shows you what was accepted at the time. Like, even if Banky is projecting because he is closeted, the surface level language still wouldn't fly. But even if you don't believe me that this language was normal, literally watch any show from the 90s, even pre-teen to teen-oriented shows.
What do you think of my hair? Guys don't ask guys that question.
Homophobia was very normal whether you were battling your own sexuality or not. And I think that's why this movie arrives at progressive for the time. It was tackling misogyny, homophobia, gendered expectations, social identity, and sexual identity. But also, it displayed masculine insecurity in multiple facets, including how it could look on the surface versus what it actually is deep inside.
Here,
What?
I want you to go down to the corner store and buy yourself a clue.
In fact, even further than that, it attempted to have us question why everyone, Holden, Banky, Alyssa, and even Hooper, feels they must fit into a specific social role. And it did so with a lot of subtext, probably the most subtext of any Kevin Smith movie. As well, one of the major things it did culturally was feature a non-stereotypical queer woman, Alyssa Jones, played by Joey Lauren Adams.
Well, if it isn't Blunt Man himself, or should I call you Chronic?
But Kevin Smith didn't randomly decide to explore these topics for no reason. While it is a fictional story, it's an amalgamation of, as Kevin Smith's movies often are, things personal to him and his friends. First, Kevin Smith became curious about the queer experience because he had a lot of pride in his brother Donald, an openly gay man. Second, he became interested in unpacking his own insecurities about female sexuality and gender roles because of his real-life relationship with Joey Lauren Adams, who, again, of course, ended up being in the movie.
Call me flattered. I heard you sent me the invite to this little soiree.
As Kevin Smith has described, he had insecurities about his sexual inexperience while dating her, and chose to kind of critically analyze this position through film. So in a way, this movie kind of elevates what Clerks and Mallrats were trying to do, which is look at the concept of being a 20-something idiot, and it does it to extreme introspection that tries to hold up a mirror to society as well. And we'll talk about that more, but before that, real quick, the last thing that he drew inspiration from was his longtime producing partner and friend, Scott Mosier, who had a bit of a thing for Guinevere Turner, a talented director in her own right, and also a friend of Scott's and a lesbian.
I became incredibly smitten or sort of like enthralled with Guinevere Turner.
I just developed what I can only call a romantic friendship with Scott Mosier.
Obviously, unlike this film, that never went anywhere for Scott.
Oh, what a shock. Not fucking likely.
Now, it's also worth noting that the characters' names, Holden and Banky, are a reference to The Catcher in the Rye. Holden Caulfield is, of course, the main character in The Catcher in the Rye, while Banky is a reference to a more minor character, Ed Banky, who, in the book, Holden views as a very phony type of person. This is kind of, a hint or maybe a wink to the viewers from the beginning that we're dealing with similar themes to The Catcher in the Rye. In this case, I would say that it's themes of unrealistic idealism in romantic partners, adjusting to adulthood, and antiquated beliefs about gender roles. So, while this is definitely fiction, we can kind of understand this jumping off point where he wanted to look at the social taboos that exist around female sexuality and why they make him insecure, but also have audiences reflect on this and other unfair expectations we have for people. He pondered why seemingly harmless traits or qualities or experiences can be met with misunderstanding or even almost inexplicable disdain.
What am I doing here? This is so fucking...
And all of this is important to keep in mind, I think, because this is an exploration in such a personal way for Kevin Smith. Like, if you do feel it's misguided in certain areas, you're probably a fair bit right, because Kevin Smith was misguided and learning about these things while making this movie, you know? Like, I hope that makes sense. It's kind of an exercise in trying to understand himself, other people, and society as a whole in honestly a very unique but somewhat risky way, given that he's turning his attention to queer people, a community that he didn't really understand when making this movie. But if Kevin Smith was misguided, I do want to say that it came from good intentions. He made sure to run the script by Guinevere Turner, who, by the way, is actually in this movie.
Oh, she's shy. Get up here and sing, bitch!
Because he did not want to offend the queer community. And to be fair, she did say that the lesbian community would hate it.
But she also told me early on, she was like, Kevin, there are going to be some lesbians that hate this movie. And I was like, really, why? And she's like, because you have the main character winding up with a man. Like, that's, why would you do something like that if you weren't trying to make people mad? And I was like, well, it's not, I'm not trying to outrage people, I'm just trying to tell a star-crossed love story.
But Kevin Smith, for better or for worse, was optimistic that the subtext would come across. And, you know, whether it did or didn't is certainly up for debate. But I will say that I think to his credit, he really, in writing the Alyssa character, he wanted to make sure she was humanized for audiences who were probably pretty used to a gay stereotype. Like, this is a major success for this movie because it's simply a queer person who was represented as flawed, complex, open, living life, generally happy and human. We can't underrate that because it really helped a lot of people feel seen. And, you know, speaking of being seen, apparently Kevin Smith has said himself that Holden is the closest character to representing him that he's ever written, which is funny because I think most fans would think of Dante from Clerks as his go-to guy. But apparently it's Holden, which is, it's interesting, I think.
Whoa, hey, look at the time. We gotta beat that traffic, huh?
What traffic? It's 1:30 in the morning.
Is there anything that makes you cringe more than watching Holden basically make a fool of himself here and then turning into a moody arsehole for the rest of the night? Like, I think this is the first glimpse where we are meant to understand that he's a bit, or a lot, insecure. And I guess your experience with this movie kind of starts here. If you read him as more sympathetic in this scene, rather than as a person who got kind of rejected and responded poorly, you might mistakenly see him as a sympathetic character throughout the movie. But I think he's more of a stand-in for some of, not all, but some of the worst and common belief systems among straight men.
Let's go. Thanks for inviting us out. It was educational.
Although, to be fair, I did not expect Alyssa to ever return Holden's affection after this scene. Like, I watched it and I was like, oh, shit, she's a lesbian. And then they become friends and we kind of wonder where it's going.
And I'd like to get back to doing something more personal, like our first book.
Well, when are you gonna do that?
I have something personal to say.
And like, in my mind, I didn't hate the idea of them being together as human beings because that's just rom-coms, but I was like, yeah, this has to be a film about this straight dude being naive to the fact that he can't entice a lesbian woman into being straight. And then hopefully learning that no amount of love is going to dictate someone's sexuality and he will have to settle for friendship. At least, that's what I thought was going to happen.
You assume that I can just turn all that around because you've got a fucking crush?
But that's not what happens. And at first I was like, oh wow, this aged poorly. Like, I was thinking for a moment that maybe I'd stumbled into a real 90s moment where the lesbian woman can magically be turned straight by the appeal of Batman's sheer persistence and bravado. Like, it's easy to see this scene and think that we're supposed to believe that it was the influence of Holden's, you know, irresistible golden handsomeness that changed her from gay to straight. But I don't think that he, quote unquote, turned her straight by any means. And maybe this is too positive of a take, but I see it as more the idea that we need to fit into these social boxes that are expected of us, and we try to shift and mold ourselves in that direction. Like, in a way, Alyssa wanted to believe that she was fully a lesbian, and that is where she belongs as a person in society. But she realizes that there are perhaps small, perhaps fleeting parts of her that are more fluid than a lesbian box. No pun intended. She experiences a complex sexuality that, in a way, is more complex than she wants it to be.
Who is it? Someone you guys don't know.
And we don't really ever get to know her sexuality entirely, but there is a part of her that believes she can engage in attraction to men, and that may have changed over the years. There may have been a point where she thought she'd never be with or even be attracted to a man again, or she may have had attraction all along, but generally swore off of men.
For your information, they don't have big hair or wear acid wash. They're from my hometown.
But in any circumstance, for her, it was easier just to align with a more commonly known identity, being a lesbian, and not violate that.
Why are you playing the pronoun game?
What? What are you talking about? I'm not even.
You are. I met someone. We have a great time. They're from my hometown.
And even her lesbian friends depicted in this film feel this way, which really shows this need that she has. Like, this is her community of people and she wants to be a part of that. And she's trying to figure out the person that she is. She's ashamed to break the news that she and Holden are together to her lesbian friend group.
Holden.
Now, to be fair, this scene has been argued to not be entirely accurate in the queer community, and I do see that. Like, this scene probably does underestimate the acceptance of sexual fluidity and bisexuality in those communities at the time. Although it's actually borrowed from Guinevere Turner's Go Fish, a movie that I haven't seen, but I should, where one of the lesbian characters imagines that if she sleeps with a man, her friends will kind of turn on her and judge her for that.
Another one bites the dust.
And, you know, it's fair to question the accuracy, but I will say that it is accurate in broader society, especially in what are now older generations, where we may expect people to be one sort of thing. Again, fitting into a neat, tidy packaging that people can understand. Like, society at this time was very much still in the process of understanding people being gay, let alone being sexually fluid or even bisexual or fitting into other queer identities. Just as a quick example, I had an older relative once say to me that being straight or gay is fine, but being bisexual is weird and that they should pick one, which is obviously misguided in kind of a hilarious way, but it speaks to the perspectives of the era. And so it's easy to see how one would rather fit into a mold that society understands, and that's what Alyssa is trying to do. Like, you can't watch this movie and forget that she is also just a young person figuring themselves out, and that's real life. She had an attraction to women and found an identity and community. Like, she hides her past before she even has any feelings for Holden, only telling Banky her past in the context of, "I've always been a lesbian." When they swap past stories, we see this.
Junior year, I'm going down on Cynthia Slater in her dorm room after we went club hopping. I'm totally drunk, and in the middle of it, I fall asleep.
So we know that she wants to be seen a certain way by a more commonly known identity, and not just by Holden, but by society at large. After all, these are people that she just met, and she's focusing exclusively on sharing her experiences with women. And later, sure, she continues hiding her past because she believes it makes Holden feel special.
It seemed to make you feel special in a way that me telling you over and over again how incredible you are just wouldn't get across. Oh, I'm sorry.
But the reality is that it's not the deep, mystical power of love being able to turn anyone straight or whatever. She's resistant to Holden because she doesn't want to shift her identity, even if her sexuality might be outside of that identity. But all of this said, you could argue that it ignores the actual lesbian experience. And not in a malicious way by any means, but just in a way where Alyssa is queer but seemingly more bisexual than gay. Because Kevin Smith saw sexuality as more fluid than just one definition, and that's what he wrote. And to his credit, as I mentioned, this is long before terms like pansexual or even bisexual were generally used and accepted. So, we do arrive at progressive for the time for that reason, but then there is the very real lesbian experience where you don't ever find yourself attracted to men, which has to be mentioned. I think that Kevin Smith values the gay community a lot and is certainly not homophobic, but what might be frustrating is when you are excited to see yourself in a film in a human way, and that is shifted unexpectedly, especially when you're someone who doesn't get a lot of representation. But the irony there is that a sexually fluid or even bisexual person was even less represented at this time, so you start to see where a little bit of debate might start to bubble to the surface, Some queer people felt represented and others felt alienated. What I think, probably though, beyond all of that, is that the biggest cause of controversy is the conceit of the classic will they, won't they. A lot of these problems could be avoided or at least diminished if you reveal her concealed attraction to men early on in the film. But then you don't get the shock value when they kiss, which is, from a storytelling perspective, an insane moment. So then your only option is to present her as a lesbian and then turn the tables on the audience. And again, repeating myself a little bit, but I can imagine seeing yourself in a character and loving it, but then having that subverted sucks. So this is a convoluted way of saying that I can see where it does succeed in tackling the complexity of sexuality and does have a very admirable queer woman on screen with very realistic and humanized struggles, but then kind of subverts you in a way that may be disappointing. So what this is her liking Holden enough to give up her existing identity and potentially her character in real time experiencing attraction that she didn't think she was capable of anymore. Again, we don't really know, but I do have to include this comment real quick. In preparation for this video, I was watching clips on YouTube and just, writing down my thoughts, and I really couldn't have said this better. Shout out to you, Mr. Rick Storm Wolf. He said this, and he's right. Alyssa is that mad because she knows that she has to change her entire life.
I just can't get into a relationship with you without throwing my whole fucking world into upheaval.
Another thing is that Alyssa is a really interesting counterpoint to Banky, who also struggles with his sexual identity.
Banky's just flat out gay. He was just repressed. That's why he was so angry and projecting and shit.
And like Alyssa says, he would have to throw his entire world into upheaval to present that he is gay or bisexual. He is very upset about Holden and Alyssa dating, and just like Alyssa was angry, he's angry too.
How was your pseudo date?
Leave it alone.
The chick bugs me.
No, everyone bugs
Get off!
He's angry because he has feelings for Holden that he can't address without changing himself. He's doing anything he can to stop their relationship because of his jealousy, and that's kind of where things unravel.
Kay, I'm telling you, she's never even been with a guy!
At this time in the film, we go from a conversation about sexual fluidity to the idea that female promiscuity is largely unaccepted. Alyssa knows that Holden wants to believe that his masculine appeal has brought her over to the dark side, and that he gets to live out this goofy fantasy that he's converted her, even though that's not true. The reality is that Alyssa has a number of past sexual experiences because people have complex lives, and sometimes those lives involve experiences that may reflect a past version of them that they themselves have varying emotions toward.
Some I did out of stupidity, some I did out of what I thought was love, but good or bad, they are my choices.
But still, when he finds out that he's with a woman who has a promiscuous past, particularly with men, he's threatened.
You have some sort of half-ass, mealy-mouthed objection to pubescent antics that took place almost 10 years ago.
And the movie really has you asking yourself, why? You know, she defends herself by simply saying that this is who she used to be. She was in a period of experimentation and she's not anymore. And why is that so bad? You know, why can't he just accept that her experiences led her to him? And on the other hand, why can't he just feel like he's enough for her? Why does he feel he needs to have had experiences on par with hers to be with her? Why does this make him feel insecure? These are interesting and very difficult questions that I think we still struggle with today.
You know, that moment I felt small, like I'd lacked experience, like I'd never be on her level, like I'd never be enough for her, something like that.
So later on, Silent Bob, who, let's be honest, is pretty much just talking as Kevin Smith in this moment, offers further insight into this idea.
But what I did not get, she didn't care.
He kind of literally sums up the latter half of the movie where there's something in society where men, for some reason, need to feel like they're the more promiscuous one and that they have had more experience.
Men need to believe that they're Marco fucking Polo when it comes to sex.
And I do think, and I've thought this for a long time, that men seem to want sex with women, but then they discourage women from having it. Like, they discourage women from being the thing that they say they want them to be, and then expect them to be that thing, but only with them specifically. I don't know, it's weird. Like, I think men sometimes wonder why they can't, you know, hook up or find a partner when a lot of women are discouraged from being sexual beings by the people who want to be with them. And that's because often they don't respect them unless they can feel like more, I don't know, sexually active than they are, or in Holden's case, at least on the same level as they are.
We've all got to have sex together.
And unfortunately for Holden, not unlike the Holden of The Catcher in the Rye, Holden doesn't immediately learn from his mistakes. He's beginning to understand that he's insecure, but he thinks that he needs to get himself to a place of more adventurous promiscuity instead of just shedding his shitty point of view. Because he still doesn't accept Alyssa for who she is. He needs himself to be different when she wants the only thing that we can really ask for in love, which is she wants him as is, and she wants to be wanted as is. But he doesn't want that. He needs her to do something that is not in line with who she is anymore, and he needs to be something he is not. And that's not a relationship, because he still simply looks down on her for who she used to be. To be a man with a woman who has a more promiscuous past is not an option to him, and she rightly knows that this means he isn't the right person for her. And not to mention, essentially, outing Banky would not be appropriate. It's kind of a bit of an afterthought when people discuss this movie, I think, but we realize at the end of the movie that his actions here also fractured his relationship with Banky.
You're in love with me.
What?
Holden loses everything, his partner and his best friend, because he's an idiot. Like, yeah, I don't know how else to put it. I mean, he outs his friend in an offensive way and seriously disrespects Alyssa. Like, I don't know. I know Silent Bob, if we ever got a scene of him finding out what Holden did, he would, like, I don't know, probably smack him. Like, this is not what Silent Bob was saying at all. And, you know, Holden is just so misguided, and I think you have to credit the movie for showing that.
This has to happen. Can't you see that? I mean, how can you not?
So even if there are flaws in this movie, I think it's a successful critique of society at the time. You know, we're never meant to think that Holden is a good guy or that he's right. We're just meant to see him learn something, eventually. But he has to get burned before that, which is why we get the 1 year later scene at the end of the movie.
What, you guys don't talk anymore?
No, not really.
Yeah, we got into a fight one day over who was better in bed.
You know, read that if you have a minute.
I will.
In this scene, I think they're reflecting on what was lost. Like, It's a bit ambiguous in my opinion, but you know that Holden missed out on a chance at real love, and because of Holden's actions, so did she. You know, it's nice to see that he seemingly has matured, but we also know that it's too little, too late. And the symbolism at the end here is simultaneously subtle yet strong. Holden literally closes the door on this chapter of his life, knowing that he hurt people, hurt himself, and he's going to have to move on knowing that he lost something special. So to me, it's a poor reading to say that she turned straight at any point. And while I do think that this kind of thinking was common in society, and unfortunately people will have that reading which kind of inadvertently and unfortunately could perpetuate that kind of thinking, I don't think it's accurate. And earlier in the movie, we get a clip of Banky talking about this point of view.
All every woman really wants, be it mother, senator, nun, is some serious deep dicking.
And I almost think that Kevin Smith putting that on screen is him trying to show how misguided people in society often are. And although you can't stop people from just misreading this as well and just thinking that Banky is right, which is unfortunate, I think that Kevin Smith was certainly highlighting ignorance in this scene and many other scenes.
Well, yeah, Banky's not the villain, but Banky's meant to be the idiot in the story.
And just by the way, we do actually later find out that years later in the 2019 Jay and Silent Bob reboot movie, that Holden ended up being a donor father for Alyssa and her then partner, and Holden and Alyssa share a child together.
We're co-parents.
Wait a sec, you have a kid?
Yeah, Alyssa and her partner wanted to have a baby, and since we've known each other, and more importantly, liked each other for 20 years, they asked me to be the father.
Overall, this is a movie that acknowledges the complexities in human beings that we never talk about, especially in 1997. And, you know, it kind of just gives it to us and says, look how dumb people can be about this whole fucking thing. And I do think you have to give Kevin Smith some credit for that. You know, his first two movies were primarily oriented towards a male heterosexual audience. And then with his third movie, he just holds up a mirror to that audience and says, hey, can you change for the betterment of society? And, you know, whatever you think, did you see that? Whatever you think about the success of that attempt and the execution of that attempt, I do think that he took a risk and made something unique. And he made what is probably the most controversial, actually that might be Dogma, one of the most controversial movies of his career. And, you know, in spite of its flaws and in spite of its past, I love it. Thanks for watching.
What's a Nubian?
Shut the fuck up.